Yet another showdown between branches of government. To whom does the White House have to answer? Senator Gary Peters is here on that and much more. Detroit lost out on Amazon, but Pontiac did not. We'll talk about jobs at the Silverdome site. And Detroit celebrates its unique designation as a city of design. Today is Sunday, September 22nd, 2019, and this is Flashpoint. All right, welcome to Flashpoint on this last day of summer 2019. We do have a very full morning to get to. First up, Senator Gary Peters is going to be here. These days, we seem to lift crisis to crisis. Well, now it's the whistleblower crisis. We're going to talk to the senator about that, but also about everything from immigration to the new NAFTA. Is it any better than the old one? Also today, we're going to get the rundown on some 1,500 new jobs coming to the old Silverdome site, courtesy of Amazon, who, by the way, also placed a massive order for electric vehicles from the Detroit area startup Rivian. So Detroit cashes in on Amazon even without getting the headquarters. And it's Detroit Design Month. Why is that worth celebrating? Well, because Detroit is the only UNESCO designation city of design in the United States. We're going to talk about that too, all today on Flashpoint. I know, I start every Sunday morning by saying it was another big week in Washington. I'm running out of ways to rephrase that, but it was certainly with the whistleblower crisis and a very opportune time to have already scheduled for coming in today, Senator Gary Peters, Michigan's Democratic Senator. Thanks so much, Senator, for being here again. It's good to have you back. I want to start with the broader picture. As you and I record our conversation, I don't know what else is still going to fall out on the whistleblower crisis, but what I think a lot of people are seeing is more and more the White House, the executive branch, not feeling that it necessarily has to answer very much to the legislative branch. We've watched a number of subpoenas going unanswered from Congress. What are your thoughts about where we are right now?
Well, it's really at an unprecedented place where you have the executive engaged in all sorts of activities. The Congress has a very specific role, as outlined in the U.S. Constitution, to provide oversight. It's all part of the checks and balances that our founders were very clear on, and how important that was to the functioning of a democratic republic. But as you mentioned, when subpoenas aren't answered, it's tough to do the oversight function. It's also tough in the Senate when we have a leader, Mitch McConnell, who says that before we even do things on the Senate, he has to clear with the president before anything comes to the floor. That's clearly not in the Constitution. The Senate and the Congress is a separate branch of government. You don't get permission from the executive. But
between executive orders, between the president's ability to declassify whatever information he deems fit at any time, are we finding out maybe that the office of president is more powerful than we've realized before?
Well, it is more powerful than, at least in the past. And, you know, part of that is Congress's fault. And this is not just a recent. Over many, many years, Congress continued to basically delegate more and more to the executive. It didn't want to step up to do the role that the Congress was supposed to do. I think now
we have a policy that says that a sitting president can't be indicted, right, which I guess would suggest that he is above the law in many ways, right?
At least during his presidency. Obviously, after you leave the presidency, that's different. But I think that's the case. Is we've got to start bringing that back in the Congress. We should be doing that on a bipartisan way. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about good constitutional government where you have checks and balances. And quite frankly, in the past, the Congress has delegated way too much authority.
But do we have a bipartisan way right now?
No, it's really tough. Now, I work on a bipartisan way. I'm very pleased that most all of the legislation that I put forward, I always work with a Republican colleague. I believe that's really the only way that you have long-standing policies put in place, is when you can get those kinds of agreements. But on the big issues, it's tough, and it's hyper-partisan right now. We have to get back to the days of regular order, is what we call it, where you'd actually try to find some common ground.
You've, among the things, I guess, that have troubled you about the White House, you've been working on this Hotel Act. Explain why you think that this has become an egregious matter to you.
The Hotel Act relates to federal employees spending taxpayer money at a hotel property owned by the president or any high-ranking official. You know, I'm ranking Democrat on Homeland Security and Government Affairs.
Right.
The government affairs part of that committee is that we're the chief oversight committee for the Senate. We're supposed to ask the tough questions. We're supposed to make sure taxpayer money is being spent appropriately and not abused. And so this is within that role. And if you look at what we have seen over the past few months, it's raised all sorts of questions about a conflict of interest of folks staying at Trump properties. And most recently now with the Air Force and Air Force flights that are coming back from the Middle East. Stopping at Prestwick Airport,
right.
And then his Turnberry Resort. Mm-hmm. This is not a military airport where they stop at, and certainly military aircraft are much more secure stopping at a military aircraft. The fuel is lower, and then you have these service members, and the number keeps going up. I've seen now 200,000, at least has been reported in the press, of money, $200,000 being spent by folks who are staying at a luxury golf resort. I served in the U.S. Navy Reserve. I served overseas. I guarantee you, I didn't stay at a luxury golf
didn't
resort.
Get that duty. Didn't draw that duty.
That was not procedure. They were comfortable, but they were low cost.
Does it matter that the president insists that he has moved his business interests into a trust? It's controlled by his family now rather than by him.
It's a trust, though, that he can still draw income on it, and it's still his properties. I don't think that holds water. I think most of the ethics folks don't think that is the case. He still profits from these properties. And so the Hotel Act that I have introduced just simply says you can't use federal per diem at a hotel owned by a high government official defined as president, vice president, or cabinet member. There are some exceptions. So if he stays at his property at Mar-a-Lago, the Secret Service, which would be there, that's obviously okay. You have to have your security. It's not about that. But we got to stop these kinds of actions that just raise questions of conflict of interest. These are distractions from what we really need to be doing, which is dealing with the problems impacting this country and focus on real issues. And so that's why we're behind it. And I have 35 of my colleagues co-sponsoring with me.
Already on it. I want to get to a couple of those other big issues, though. For years, Democrats, especially in Michigan, complained about the unfairness of NAFTA. And now we have a new NAFTA. And the reticence of some Democrats is being seen by Republicans as, see, this is just about your Trump hatred. You've wanted a new NAFTA forever. You've got one, and you can't really get behind it. Where are you on the new NAFTA version?
Well, certainly we needed to have a new NAFTA. There's no question about it. We saw way too many of our jobs being exported to Mexico in particular. We needed to even that playing field in many respects. The NAFTA that has been negotiated does move us down the road, that's for sure, but we'd like to have more. And one aspect that I think is absolutely critical, and hopefully this can be negotiated, is just to make sure we have enforcement powers. You have to actually put in the contract, in the treaty, that you can enforce the rules there. If you can't enforce the rules, then rules aren't worth a whole lot. I mean, we're finding right now with China, and China doesn't follow the rules, and then we're engaged in these tariffs.
Yep.
It's a very messy business. It's a whole lot better to have it outlined in an agreement, exactly how you enforce the rules in that agreement. Someone said, otherwise it's just a discussion that people are having, unless you actually have rules. Our laws that we have in place in this country are powerful because we actually enforce those laws. Our trade policy should be written in the same way.
I wanted to ask you about immigration. Everybody in Washington, and especially in the Michigan delegation, has been spending a lot of time on immigration lately, even though it feels like it's at the opposite end of the country. But I don't think it's enough for Democrats to complain about a current policy. As the old saying goes, and as I said to Representative Slotkin on a recent program, no is not a plan. What is sound immigration policy that we should be forming in the United States and fashioning for Michigan?
Well, first off, you have to have secure borders. I'm ranking member on Homeland Security. This is what I deal with every day, and you have to make sure your borders are secure, and you have to follow those laws. I have to remind my colleagues.
Why isn't that a wall, I guess, is what the president would say.
Pardon me?
Why isn't that a wall? Isn't that a secure border?
Actually, in some cases, yes, but in most cases, no. And that's what the issue is. We want to do it in a cost-effective way. Certainly physical barriers are part of that, and it makes sense. But even if you ask the Department of Homeland Security, which I work with on a regular basis, if you look at our southern border, we have 2,000 miles of border. Yeah. About 700 of it has a physical barrier. There's probably needs for some additional. But the department will tell you, for 1,000 miles, it makes no sense to have a physical barrier. It's better to track people with drones and electronics. It's not a problem of people walking across the open desert in Arizona. You can track folks. What a wall does, and it's clear, a wall doesn't usually stop people. It usually only slows them down. And slowing them down is a very important strategy in a lot of places, particularly in urban areas where you can then react. But slowing somebody down in the middle of the Arizona desert isn't going to make it's going to make a lot of difference. You better have the other areas.
Then let's move to who should be coming in, and what do we do with all of these people seeking asylum?
Well, we have folks that are coming now that are different than in the past. So we're dealing with a more complex problem. In the past, there were usually young males from Mexico that would be heading north. They would be caught, sent back. Now we have families coming out from Central America and Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and they're claiming asylum. And under international law, they have the right to do that, and certainly consistent with American values. But we have to speed up the process dramatically, the due process that folks go through. There's a very large backlog now. The backlog continues to grow. We have appropriated more resources to one, deal with the humanitarian issues, which we have to deal with. I don't think anybody thinks that folks coming across the border seeking asylum should be treated in a horrible way and not treated with human dignity. So we have to make sure we're dealing with the humanitarian aspects, but then speed up the legal process so you can determine whether or not it's a legitimate claim. And if it's not, they need to be sent back home.
But while they're waiting for that, should they be staying here during that interim?
They will be here. They'll stay here if they're across the border. They get across, but it should be done quickly. And part of this, I think you can speed up the actual assessment of whether or not this is a credible claim. That could be sped up, and you could deal with that a whole lot quicker than we're dealing with right now. So that's a failure of that aspect. But if people meet that initial threshold, it may take a little longer for that to go through the court case. But certainly that is an area that we know will be effective. And when people know there's that initial screening, and that initial screening to determine a level of credibility is being done, that'll act as a deterrent also from folks coming across the border to begin with.
A million things to get to. That's the best we can do with our time allotted this morning. In fact, you and I usually spend so much time talking about PFAS, and I know we'll talk about that again the next time you're back with us again.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Good to be with you.
Senator Gary Peters. We come back, we'll talk about some big economic news that came in for the state this past week, even as we watch the strike playing out between GM and the UAW. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
The 2019 Cadillacs are made to move and made to shine. GM employees and eligible family members with a current eligible GM lease get this low mileage lease on this 2019 Cadillac XT5 for $299 per month.
Substance use, disabilities, and mental health concerns affect us all in one way or another. With treatment and support, recovery is possible for everyone. If you or someone you love is struggling with suicidal thoughts, feelings of hopelessness, or just needs a listening ear on the journey to recovery, there is hope and there is help. Get connected with a mental health professional when you contact the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority 24/7, 800-241-4949. Here to talk, here to help.
Don't miss out on the 2019 Michigan Renaissance Festival, where adventure awaits beyond every turn. Journey back to a time when life was exciting, magical, and fierce. For the first time ever, come and see a majestic Pegasus, or test your bravery and intellect at our all-new escape room. There's great fun to be had for all ages. The adventure takes place now through September 29th. Get your tickets today at one of these fine ticket outlets.
The city is so proud of you.
We are so humbled and blessed to be a part of this experience, and it's all because of you.
This is what happens when a community comes together.
To have the city behind us, that makes DYC feel amazing.
Stand up. Detroit, stand up.
And Detroit has big time. The key to the city.
We have pulled our resources to establish a fund. $1 million!
Congratulations, Detroit Youth Choir. You've made your city proud.
Welcome back. A lot of business news I want to get to this morning, and Chad Livengood is with us here from Crane's Detroit Business. Chad, many things that we'll try to rifle through here real quickly. I want to start with homecoming. Crane's just, again, hosted this year's edition, which I can't remember how many years you all have been doing this.
6 years.
6 years now. This thing has been a big success on a lot of different levels, but every year brings with it its own set of highlights. What was this year's highlight of the expats coming back?
So we bring in about 250 former Metro Detroiters, people who have gone on and done big things in their career
careers in business and music and the arts and sports all over the world. And this year's theme was really focused on, okay, if you want to re-engage in Detroit, one of the areas that we need help in is helping rebuild Detroit's black middle class. And bringing back folks who went to the suburbs with the white middle class flight as well, and reestablishing that. So we focused a lot on entrepreneurship, things that are going on in the city, places where people can think about, maybe even imagine themselves getting involved in or investing in the city. And then also we had a lot of theme. We had an interesting interview on stage with Ken Buckfire. He was one of the architects.
You wrote a column about him. Yep.
Yeah, and my column focused on how Buckfire really says Detroit's got to get a handle on the 40 square miles of vacant land in this city and what to do with it. It's a multi-decade decision, but it's really going to affect sort of the make or break of this bankruptcy 5 years after we got out of bankruptcy.
And there's really no model to follow. Nobody else has ever had that kind of canvas.
Nobody has a canvas or a playbook, but we could actually create it. And Buckfire seems to be sort of needling Mayor Mike Duggan's administration here to really start thinking broadly about a bigger agenda for that land.
We had some interesting economic news breaking while they were all here. As you and I are recording this conversation, we've still got a strike going on, which it seems to me that with General Motors and the UAW, the decision by GM over Cobra and healthcare coverage was one of those, well, that escalated quickly kind of moments.
Yeah.
Are we in for a long one?
It does look like that, and it gets even more precarious. We are a week out from a potential government shutdown in state government. If we get to October 1st and there's not a state budget, we could have a partial or full state government shutdown, and the specter of a UAW strike and a government shutdown all at once. And the economists already said if we get to day 10 of this strike in next week, we will have a single state recession on our hands. And so there's a lot riding here. It's not just about GM, not just about the UAW workers and their benefits. Obviously, when the UAW or the GM yanked back those health care benefits, that inflamed a lot of people and created some sympathy for the union. This is really one of the first modern strike of our times that is also being played out in social media. Think about all the strikes over the years, the newspaper strike, the other UAW strikes over time in this town, that they didn't have the power of social media.
Had actual literal megaphones in those days.
So there are millions of megaphones now that add to this equation, and how that plays, General Motors has to be watching that.
Yeah, really good point, and especially as we watch what happens in Lansing here as we get close to a shutdown. Amazon brought Detroit two interesting pieces of news this week. First off, 1,500 jobs coming to the former Silverdome site, which has just vexed Oakland County officials and Pontiac leaders for so long. This is a pretty good answer, it would seem.
Yeah, since the Lions left town, well over 15 years ago, this has been one of the key things that the late Brooks Patterson was very focused on as county executive. And one thing that people just kind of looked at and said, that's never going to get solved. I don't believe it. I mean, just in a month's time, we've got the Shostak brothers have a plan for redeveloping and tearing down the Palace of Auburn Hills. And now the demolished Silverdome site is going to see new life with a distribution center, Amazon bringing in 1,500 some odd jobs, and really kind of filling in a big hole. Now you just got to get like the Northland Mall and Summit Place, and we'll start figuring out some other big.
Still a ways to go, but these are big pieces. The other interesting Amazon news: them ordering 100,000 electric vehicles from Rivian, a startup in Plymouth, which has yet to really produce a vehicle, certainly on any mass scale. This is fascinating. About what it tells us not only about Amazon but about Rivian.
Yeah, Rivian has attracted hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital investments from automakers, and so whether Ford or someone ends up actually doing that production work is yet to be seen. But there is a tremendous value here and tremendous opportunity for next generation autonomous or electric vehicles. And again, it always comes down to we've got the opportunity to do it here in Metro Detroit. That's why this strike is really kind of interesting in the fashion that this is a sort of legacy company legacy issue. And over here you got this brand new horse that's never done anything, and they're getting a massive contract. You got Mahindra is in the running, another company in Southeast Michigan. They're in the running to build tens of thousands of new post office vehicles. So you have a bunch of new players to the game here who are really kind of reshuffling the deck in the automotive industry in Metro Detroit.
Puts it in great perspective. It's always good to talk to you, and I guess I'll see you on the lawn out there in front of the Capitol at midnight here coming up on September 30th.
We'll be
probably.
watching.
Yeah, you bet. Chad Lavengood from Cranes. We'll come back. We'll talk about Design Month in Detroit.
Broadway's Come From Away is a Best Musical winner all across North America. This stirring and inspiring musical takes you to a place you never want to leave. Celebrate the best of humankind and the best in all of us at Come From Away.
October 1st through the 13th at the Fisher Theater. Tickets now at BroadwayInDetroit.com.
We're restocked and reloaded at Art Van Furniture and Mattress. Everything must go for our inventory clear out. Up to 80% off, plus an extra 15% off the lowest price. Plus, we pay your sales tax. Get 0% financing up to 36 months. 5-piece dining sets, $6.97. 2-piece sectionals, $5.97. Upholstered beds, $2.97. Free air fryers, free AirPods. The Art Van Furniture and Mattress inventory clear out. Saturday 10 to 9. Extended hours Sunday 11 to 9.
The region is on the rise. Project after project, building, growing, innovating. We're building the future right now. Hard work matters here. IBEW Local 58 electricians and NECA signatory contractors bring commitment, pride, expertise, and passion to every job. It's our code of excellence. One vision, one team, one mission. To build the very best Michigan for all of us. Put us to work for you. The best contractors, the best electricians, period.
Monday at 5. Robots. Lasers. Agents. Ever wonder what happens after you drop off your luggage for a flight?
I'm Local 4 Defender Karen Drew. I'm taking you inside a room you've never seen before.
Defender cameras roll inside this restricted area. See the TSA tech making your flight safer.
It improves our detection capabilities based on the technology.
Defender cameras take you where few can. Monday at 5 on Local 4 News.
Welcome back. There are 31 cities in the world that have been determined to be UNESCO Cities of Design. There's only one in the United States, and it's the city of Detroit. Great to have Olga Stella back with us on Flashpoint from Design Corps. I'm not sure that everybody here can fully appreciate what that designation means. We know there's lots of great cities that seem to be built on great designs, whether it's architecture or whatever, but only one.
Right, so why not New York or San Francisco, right? That's what a lot of people wonder. And it's because not only do we have this history and legacy of design assets, reaching back 100 years and even today, but it's really the opportunity for design to make a lasting impact in the city. We have over 55 partners in community, government, business, who are all working to really use those design assets to improve the city and create inclusive opportunities. Well,
and when we talk about design, we're talking about so many different things. It's not just architecture. It's many things, right?
I was describing it to someone today. It's both the MoGo public bike share and the way that their system is developed using community input, and just how easy it is. If you're low income, you can get a $5 annual pass, and the way to get that pass is super, super easy. There's no stigma attached. It's that.
That's a kind of design.
Yeah. It's Ralph C. Wilson Centennial Park and on the riverfront and the process to develop that. And then it can be a product. It can be the Floyd table that you don't need any tools to build. So all of these things are design.
And you've got a month now to celebrate the City of Design. This is Design Month. You just saw, we just had a huge crowd out at the Eastern Market celebrating all the murals and all of its own design assets on Eastern Market After Dark this past Thursday. But you got a lot more to come. What else is going to be doing?
I think the thing I'm most excited about is we're finally unveiling our 3 prototype winners of the Detroit City Design Competition.
I think the last time you were here, we were talking about the bids going out for that, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the first time we had an international design competition to help come up with new ideas for how to promote safety and mobility in Detroit neighborhoods, in Southwest Detroit, Hope Village, and Grandmont Rosedale. And the public can come out. Those prototypes have been installed in Beacon Park. We're inviting the community to come out, check them out. We're having a huge party on September 29th, Sunday, September 29th, for people to really interact with them and to have folks from the neighborhoods using art and music and other things to really activate them. And then in the spring, they'll be moved into those 3 neighborhoods for community testing.
Well, that becomes the harder part. I mean, it's one thing to put it all on paper and then turning design into, that's its own design problem,
exactly.
Isn't it? Trying to turn design into reality.
Yeah, it is. And I think, it takes a lot of different hands. For this city design competition, we had representatives from the city's Public Works Department, from Complete Streets. We had community representatives. Yesterday I was in the park watching the designers actually build these installations. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of hands. And I think sometimes, we get really stuck on this term design as being really hard to understand. But it's really, if we just think of it as creative problem solving, and we're solving problems of place, of neighborhoods, we're solving problems around systems, and we're solving problems around the things that we need, whether it's furniture or our phones or whatever.
And it's the city's legacy, because transportation, building automobiles, getting them to the public was mass problem solving, and now we're trying to solve it in a new way with whatever mobility will end up being.
Exactly. And I mean, we still have the highest concentration of commercial industrial designers in the U.S., 16 times more concentrated than anywhere else in the U.S., absolutely ranks globally. This is a real strength, but part of our challenge is that the design talent that we have is often unseen. Yeah. They're working, we have 80,000 people in the design industries in our region. We have 150,000 designers. So most of the designers aren't working in architecture or graphic design. They're working at General Motors. They're working at the big companies. They're working for Quicken Loans, right? So they're hidden from view. And what we do through Detroit Month of Design and these kinds of projects is help people see why their contributions matter.
And we've only got about 20 seconds left, but I mentioned the 31 cities. You've got a whole bunch of people from those cities that have come to visit.
We've just finished up hosting 20 of those 31 cities here for 3 days. We've been learning from Helsinki and Singapore, even small cities like Graz, Austria. So many amazing projects they've done, all about building a better city for the people in their community.
It's fantastic, and reason to celebrate for the whole month. Olga, good to have you back on Flashpoint. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here as well. Meet the Press is coming up next. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time right back here for Flashpoint.